Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing the Sunshine Cup team that I used to reach expert rank and number 8 in the entire world on the Go Battle League leaderboards. Now this team was not created by me, this team was created by Executor. The team is as follows: Watergun, Shadow Quagsire, Piloswine, and Macargo. My twist on the team was that I was running Shadow Quagsire with Drain Punch. I think Drain Punch is the superior second charge move for Watergun Quagsire in this meta, as it gives Quagsire way better play into a lot of the normal types and allows it to absolutely demolish Credilli. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1 we pick up a very strong lead, leading Shadow Watergun Quagsire into Obstagoon. Now this is a pretty decent neutral matchup for Quagsire, but it gets so much better when you have double super effective Drain Punch. I shield up the first Night Slash, fire off the Drain Punch, and now my opponent is going to take massive damage unless they put up a Protect Shield. They do put up the shield, but now I have a +1 defense Quagsire, which means I'm just simply never going to get knocked out here by the Night Slash. I can absorb this damage, I can overfarm massively, and my opponent basically just has to let this go now because I'm already almost at the back-to-back Aqua Tails. Aqua Tail will secure the knockout. My opponent now sends out a Clodsire, and I'm going to get some very valuable damage here. Clodsire will be able to farm down. Look at how much value I got out of the Shadow Drain Punch Quagsire. I basically KO'd one entire Pokemon, 2/3 of a Clodsire, and now I can bring in Piloswine and absorb whatever my opponent wants to throw. They go for the Stone Edge, they pivot out. In the back is a Shadow Counter Blaziken, and I stay in to fire off the Icicle Spear. If my opponent shields, I can just knock them out with the Rock Tomb, and if they no shield, Shadow Blaziken, while it's very strong, is so frail that I should just be able to incinerate down. So, I'm forced to put up the shield as they will fire off Aura Sphere, but I can survive 2 more counters and get that farm down and just exit with way too much energy. Back in comes the Clodsire. Here, arguably, I go for a misplay. I should just go double Overheat to guarantee the win, and my opponent will end up no shielding, but either way, there's just no possible way for me to lose the game at this point because I just have too much energy. I could even pivot into the Piloswine, snipe down with the Powder Snow, and take the game 1 win. We move to the next match, leading Shadow Quagsire into Credilli, and this is another matchup where Drain Punch is absolutely essential. Drain Punch allows me to hit for super effective damage, and by landing 1 Drain Punch, my opponent is now in a range where I can just Water Gun them down in the 2s. A lot of Credillis like to throw their move as soon as they get there, so that's why I do end up risking the CMP die and firing off that Drain Punch as soon as I get it. But now, I can pressure them with Aqua Tails. I am very comfortable double shielding here. Even if my opponent goes for Rock Tomb, I should still be able to get the farm down. They end up going for a double Grass Knot, and then pivoting out into a Rangaroo. This team is a little bit soft to a Rangaroo. The best answer that this team has to this Pokemon is going to be Macargo, just because Macargo only takes neutral damage. They go for the Trailblaze. I end up under-tapping the Rock Tomb just because I need to get this damage. If I tried to go for good timing, then they could end up firing off a boosted Trailblaze and just remove me from the field of play. They're now back to their regular attack stat. They go for the Trailblaze. It barely misses the knockout, and now I can send to the Quagsire and snipe them down with Water Gun. If they bring in the Credilli is just going to get farmed. It's going to be a Clodsire in the back, and since we got Macargo out of the way, our only Pokemon remaining are Pokemon that just absolutely destroy the Clodsire. Clodsire shields the first, but I'm already at Aqua Tail number 2, and that damage is going to be devastating. Now I can bank some energy, send in the Piloswine, and at this point my opponent should be resigning the match. There's just no path forward for them in this game. Stone Edge is going to land. I fire off the Icicle Spear just because I may as well take the knockout because it's not like Credilli can ever make a move. Down goes the Clodsire, back in comes the Credilli, and there's the top left. Unfortunately for my opponent, there just really wasn't a lot they could do in that game. We get a very strong lead in the next match, Shadow Quagsire into Dunsparce. This is already a pretty good matchup for the Quagsire. However, it gets even better now that you have Drain Punch. Unfortunately, I did end up lagging to start this game, so you'll notice I end up starting a few fast moves behind. I should have been at 13 Water Guns there, and I definitely did not have 13 Water Guns. But even with losing a few fast moves, this matchup is just so incredibly dominant for the Quagsire. I'm able to hit them for super effective, I can boost up my defense, and now I'm able to tank these draw runs very, very comfortably. I'm pretty confident that I can knock out here with the slightly cheaper Aqua Tail, so I will go for it. Aqua Tail lands, Dunsparce falls, and my opponent sends in Flygon. Thankfully, Flygon is not able to farm down the boosted Quagsire. Aqua Tail is going to pressure away a shield, and now I can just bring in the Piloswine. My opponent stays in to throw energy. I decide that I want to keep my options open, so I will put up a shield. They do fire off the Twister in the back. It's going to be a Clodsire, and this game is over. I'm going to fire off energy right before they're able to make the Earthquake. Unfortunately for me, Macargo is pretty useless in this game, so I may as well send in the Macargo and just fully sacrifice it to a one-hit KO Earthquake. Earthquake will take the knockout. I believe this is the endgame where I end up throwing pretty spectacularly. Like this can only be a Sludge Bomb, but for whatever reason in my head, I completely lost count, and I definitely should not have shielded there. My opponent sends in Flygon, they time it perfectly so they're able to get the sneak, and now they're gonna make a Twister. Luckily for me, Twister does not KO Piloswine, so I'm still able to win the game, but that was a very poorly played endgame from me. I was very far ahead, but I almost let my opponent come all the way back to steal a win, but luckily, we were so far ahead that it did not end up mattering. We move to the next game, and we lead Shadow Water Gun Quagsire into Pidgeot. Versus this lead, I do 3 Water Guns and then Sage Switch into Piloswine. Doing 3 Water Guns and switching forces them into an overtap with the Pidgeot, and then when they bring out their counter user, you're up enough energy that you're actually going to be able to win the matchup. Because Obstagoon and Vigoroth are honestly pretty bad in this meta. Obstagoon can land the Cross Chop, but it does not KO. If you have a good Piloswine, forcing the Pidgeot overtap and getting that 2 Powder Snow head start means that you're always going to be able to win Switch Advantage or Shield Advantage against those fighting type counter switches. And now with Switch Advantage, the game is just completely over. I should have been completely hard countered in this game. There was Pidgeot lead and 2 Pokemon with fighting fast moves. But because Piloswine up just that little bit of energy is so strong, we have just completely flipped the game on its head. My opponent would have had to either give up shield advantage or switch advantage. They decide to save the shields, and now with switch advantage, I'm in such a commanding position. I get to fire off Rock Tombs at the Pidgeot. This is not the Shadow Pidgeot, it is the non-Shadow, which means even a Brave Bird is not going to do a lot here. They go for the Brave Bird, we're able to tank that pretty comfortably, and make the Rock Tomb. At this point, I can just trust in the Quagsire to win the game. Rock Tomb will knock out the Pidgeot, and I can send back in the Quagsire. I'm going to be shielding up everything here and then just looking to boost up my defense with Drain Punch. The Water Guns are shredding through Double. This cannot be a payback, so I am perfectly fine with letting this go. It is just going to be the Body Slam, and now I can just boost up my defense, Water Gun down, and we're in a very comfortable position. My opponent realizes there's no way out, they're not going to use their shield, and we're able to take the win. We get the same lead as the last game, this time leading into a Shadow Pidgeot. As before, I do the 3 Water Guns, force the overtap, and now my opponent actually sends out Furret. Now this is another matchup where having that 2 Powder Snow head start can allow you to flip it. Typically, how I like to try and flip the matchup is by landing a Stone Edge. If you're ever able to land a Stone Edge, then in the 2s you're actually able to farm down even if your opponent goes for Brick Breaks. So, after baiting with the Icicle Spear the first time, I'm going to be full sending the Stone Edge. Stone Edge is going to connect, and now I can just make a play for Switch. Going down shields is honestly very okay here because the Pidgeot isn't going to be able to do anything into the Magcargo. My opponent actually sends back in the Pidgeot, and they're instantly met with the Icicle Spear. That's going to pressure away a shield, and now I'm very okay just letting them farm me down because their energy isn't going to do anything into Magcargo. In the back, they have Clodsire, I send in the Quagsire, and that 3 Water Gun and Switch tech to force a Pidgeot overtap just continues to pay dividends. We move to the next match, picking up a bit of a scary lead, Shadow Quagsire into Drampa. This is another situation where having Drain Punch will be very helpful. My opponent does not respect it, and that's going to cost them a lot of their health bar. I decide that I will let this go. Drampa is going to connect with the Fly, and bad news for me, it's a simultaneous switch, Piloswine into the Shadow Water Gun Quagsire. Granted, I would much rather see the Water Gun Quagsire on the Piloswine than on the Magcargo, but I still feel like I'm in a very negative position. I will put up the shield. The Powder Snow damage here is just simply too valuable. I need to get whatever damage that I can possibly get onto this Quagsire because I cannot afford to take double super effective Water Guns onto Magcargo. My opponent sends in Fearow, and unfortunately, this game is probably going to end in defeat. I bring in the Magcargo, but realistically, I just don't see a way out of this game. Even if I'm able to get a debuff onto this Fearow, Drill Run is still going to hit for way too much damage. And it is going to be a charge stack priority tie. My opponent making the read that I would not go for the catch. That's just a very heads-up play from them. Unfortunately, my Magcargo didn't really have anywhere it could go into that Fearow Quagsire backline. We see Fearow once again in the next match, but this time it's on the lead. Now, an important piece of information about the Quagsire Fearow matchup. You actually want to run, if you're running Water Gun Quagsire, a bit of attack on the Quagsire because there is a Water Gun breakpoint that you can get versus Fearow. If you have a bit of attack, you can do 4 damage per Water Gun instead of 3, and that means that you're actually able to win the 2s against Fearow, just straight farming them down. Now, in that matchup, I was actually getting the breakpoint. My opponent must not have a particularly good Fearow, but it is recommended to run more attack than what I'm running on my Shadow Quagsire, just so that way you can ensure that you're always getting that breakpoint. The Furret Piloswine matchup, if you're at an advantage with Piloswine, honestly feels like a pretty comfortable spot to be in. My opponent will end up going for the CMP tie, and I decide that I'm just going to let this go. Swift lands, I can pivot into Magcargo, and my opponent is going to bank energy and then send in the Fearow. Fearow should be energy dry as they fire off a move here, so I think I should be in a pretty good position to just fully farm down. If my counts are accurate, they're not getting a move. I exit with 100 energy on Magcargo, and my opponent will concede the match. We get same leads as last game in the next match, leading Shadow Quagsire into Fearow. I throw one Water Gun, safe switch into Piloswine, and my opponent is going to respond with Obstagoon. This is once again going to be episode 5000 of Obstagoon being terrible in this meta, because as Obstagoon fires off the super effective cross chop, it just does not KO Piloswine. Having a good IV Piloswine is just so amazing in this meta. We're able to flip switch against the Fearow. Switch advantage honestly doesn't really help us, because Fearow does have coverage for Magcargo. So even though switch advantage was secured, I'm actually going to be setting back in the Shadow Quagsire. Quagsire will take some pretty substantial damage here from the Drill Peck, but the good news is I can now save the energy and then pivot into the Magcargo. Unfortunately, my opponent is already at a Drill Run. That's going to pressure away a shield from the Magcargo. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon in the back is going to be Furret. Furret in this meta is typically going to be on Brick Break. Brick Break will hit for big, super effective damage. My opponent puts up a shield, but the fact that I've already applied an attack drop onto them is pretty nice because that means that the Brick Break is really not going to do much. Now I can threaten big damage with a potential Overheat, but I decide to double down and go for a second Rock Tomb. My opponent respects the Overheat. I'm now rapidly approaching the Overheat, and I decide to put up the shield. I need this damage onto the Furret, so I put up the shield and click the Overheat, and that's going to be the end of Furret. And with Furret out of the way, I have stored energy on the Quagsire. I should be able to outpace that Fearow. Back in comes the Fearow. They don't have the energy, and they're going to resign the match. We move to the next match, picking up a very nice lead. Shadow Water Gun Quagsire into the Piloswine. Piloswine stays in to grab early chip or shield advantage, and then they're going to look to pivot out. In comes Licky Licky, and this is definitely my best answer to a Licky Licky, so I am going to be staying on the field with the Quagsire. Drain Punch hits for super effective. My defense now moves to +1, and that means as they fire off Shadow Ball here, I should be able to tank it pretty comfortably. Unfortunately, I don't think I can quite knock out with the Drain Punch. It is going to be pretty close, but I think they will be able to hang on. I fire off the Drain Punch. They are able to survive, but this should only be a Body Slam. And at +2 defense, I should be able to hang on here. I pivot out, expecting the Simul Switch, and it's going to be Piloswine into Piloswine. Now, I've had a lot of clutch 1 HP survives in these battles because I have a really good Piloswine. Unfortunately, that means I often lose charge stack priority. So playing to the CMP tie was actually a pretty big error by me. I should have always just overfarmed and looked to double up. My opponent has Ninetales in the back, and this is very scary. A lot of Ninetales in this meta are now running Scorching Sands. If they have Scorching Sands, this battle is over. Scorching Sands gives Ninetales incredible flexibility. My opponent blind throws anticipating the Quagsire, but I don't bring in the Quagsire. Instead, I bring in Magcargo. If they have Scorching Sands, I'm probably going to lose, but I will put up the shield anyway. But thankfully, they have Energy Ball. An Energy Ball, even though it will hit for neutral damage, it won't two-shot after Rock Tomb debuff. I just have to not let my opponent catch, so I end up under-tapping. Going on alignment is not something my opponent would expect, so I'm actually able to get the move landing on its intended target. Now, they can fire off Energy Ball, but it will simply fail to secure the knockout. I just have to be very careful, watching for the potential catch. They go for the catch, expecting the under-tap, but this time we go for the fast move, and we take the win. We move to the next match, Shadow Quagsire into Shadow Obstagoon. My opponent safe switches into Fearow, and I have a pretty nice answer as I send in Piloswine. If you have a suboptimal Piloswine, then Fearow can actually flip this by landing a Drill Peck, but my Piloswine should be good enough that I will be able to maintain switch advantage. I overfarm, take the knockout with the Icicle Spear, in comes the Shadow Obstagoon, and guess what? They can't farm down. Obstagoon, it just never does the damage you need it to in this meta, and I'm going to take advantage of the fact that my opponent is still switch locked. So I bring in the Quagsire and no shield as they go for a cross chop. In the back, they have Piloswine, so they are incredibly weak to the Drain Punch Shadow Quagsire. I fire off the Aqua Tail just to grab a shield advantage, and now I can bring in Magcargo. At this point, the game plan is very simple. I'm just going to double shield. I don't even have to play the guessing games. Will they full send? Will they bait? Because genuinely, it does not matter. I can just incinerate all the way down, go for double Rock Tombs, and my opponent will resign the match. Hopping into the final match, we get one final Credilli for the road. And I'm going to go what I went for before, which is just firing off the Drain Punch. Drain Punch will boost up my defense. It'll hit him for big super effective damage. And now, as my opponent looks to fire off energy, I feel very comfortable double shielding if I need to. They end up going for the Rock Tomb bait, but my Water Guns still, I believe, do the same amount of damage here. My opponent does make a very nice catch. They catch the debuffed Aqua Tail onto Fearow, but now I'm set up for diabolical Piloswine farm. My opponent tries to go for the charge stack priority tie, but I have different ideas. I'm just gonna go for the full farm down with Pylo. So I get to exit with the back-to-back Icicle Spears. Nothing in the game wants to take this damage from Piloswine. My opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. I realize this is the only Sunshine Cup video that I have posted this week, but I did want to showcase the best team that's been working for me. I think that the Drain Punch tech on Shadow Quagsire is absolutely essential to unlocking this team. This is a very strong team on its own, but I think Shadow Quagsire really ascends to a whole new level with the Drain Punch technology. Having an ability to just absolutely dominate so many of these neutral matchups with Drain Punch, and to have way better matchups into a lot of the pseudo fighters like the Vigoroths and Obstagoons of the world is a very big plus. Additionally, being able to just completely destroy Credilli, a Pokemon that normally Quagsire struggles quite a bit against, I think is another pretty massive plus. So I really like Drain Punch on Shadow Quagsire. Previously, I referred to Drain Punch Sableye as the Immortal Sableye. I think I'm probably going to refer to this as the Immortal Quagsire. There were so many matches where being able to boost up my defense and make Quagsire way bulkier than it ever could be on its own really ended up giving me just such an incredible advantage, where Quagsire was almost able to 1v2 in a lot of games just by virtue of its unique coverage and its ability to boost up its defense. That just set up the backline really nicely for success. I do think a few notes that I do want people to take out of this video if they're going to try this team is specifically the 3 Water Gun and Switch tech versus the Pidgeot leads. Being able to force that overtap to then set up your Piloswine to be able to win the zeros against the counter user that comes in is absolutely vital. Or if they send in Furret, have an ability to be up enough energy where you can actually potentially try and make a play for Switch advantage. If you do lead into Furret with this team, typically as the Quagsire, I'll go straight Drain Punch and I'll end up calling the bait. At least at the ELO range that I'm playing at, I haven't seen a Trailblaze Furret in days, so if they're all on Brick Break, then I don't really see a reason to end up shielding. Because I feel like if you no-shield the Trailblaze, you end up losing the game anyway, but if you end up shielding from a Furret and it's not a Trailblaze, then you're basically lost already because you ended up shielding a move that you didn't need to shield. So I didn't really see a lot of Furret leads, but against the Furret leads that I did play against, I very frequently just no-shielded if they threw on 7, trusting on the fact that most people are not actually on Trailblaze in this meta because of the amount of Furret mirrors and stuff like that. Brick Break just ends up being far more preferred. Overall, I think this team is really, really nice. I think it's a winner in the Sunshine Cup, and hey, it worked out pretty well for me. I've tried to play as much Mega Master League as I could this week. Unfortunately, queue times are pretty bad in Mega Masters, so that's what kind of forced me into playing Sunshine, and this was definitely the best Sunshine Cup team that I've played this week. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated. So thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.